Today I'm looking at something a little bit different. It is a Nittiku NG101. You're probably saying, what in the heck is that? Well, this should be obvious from the name. It's obviously Japanese. This is a post-World War II Japanese portable phonograph. Now, after World War II, the Japanese found themselves, well, first of all, they nationalized foreign interests in the late 1930s. I believe it was 1937. Which means that they kicked out RCA and HMV and Columbia and Decca and anybody else that had a factory or whatever in Japan. And it was turned over to Japanese owners, new owners. After World War II, the factories had been heavily bombed. I mean, they were blitzed. So what they did was, they said they had a quarter of a factory here, they had a third of a factory there, they had a tenth of a factory there. They consolidated all of it, and they started manufacturing their own portable phonographs again, using a weird conglomeration of parts from different manufacturers that they had copied. The case, in this case, vaguely Columbia, very vaguely, and a little bit HMV with the corner protectors here. Japanese style lid stay, but I have seen something similar, I believe, on a Columbia, or maybe not. It's a little button up there that releases it. This is actually the crank hole, I'm sorry. That's the lid. The lid clasp is up there. The lid stay is kind of, I'm not really sure where they sourced that. Could have been anywhere or their own. The case is intermediate size. It's not as big as an HMV 101. It's kind of similar to the Garrard 302 that I had up not too far back. And as you can see here, and of course that's pure HMV. It's an exact copy of the HMV style of carry handle. The horn, you can see it's got a kind of a Swiss style tone arm on there that appears to be made from aluminum. It's not pot metal because it's not erupting with cracks and swelling everywhere, but it appears to be aluminum under black paint. I guess they didn't have a whole lot of chrome available at the time. The hinges, as you can see, were sourced from Columbia. The horn starts there, and it kind of comes out under here and a little bit over here on the side. I haven't heard it play yet, so I don't really know how that sounds. Probably not bad. And they've made an effort to isolate the motor, as if they had a full, wraparound horn in there. The motor compartment is isolated from the horn compartment. And let me see if I can show you how this works. There we go. See? When the motor board is on, there is no access to the motor from the horn compartment. Totally isolated. And they did a nice job putting this together, too. It's all, there is a kind of a mixture of solid plank, oak, I suppose, and plywood. That's plywood down there. And it's all screwed together, tacked together, and it's got reinforcements here, to give it some extra strength, and a lid too. You can see where they reinforced the lid here to make sure it didn't get too bouncy, I guess. And of course, it's an oak finish. It's a shellac finish. It's not wrapped in fabric, which is kind of surprising, as it was the common practice, especially post-war, to wrap portable phonographs in some form of rexine or fake leather or snakeskin or whatever. There weren't too many that were left like this, but maybe on the Japanese market that was popular at the time. I don't know. The motor is obviously a Garrard copy, which they would have lifted from Columbia. It does not have, or does it have? It actually does have this, a sort of, not exactly the same as Garrard, the little sandwich of metal and fiber in the gear there, but it does have a fiber gear. It just has, and it's not brass. This appears to be steel. Yeah, that's not brass at all. And it has brass rivets through it, kind of holding the whole sandwich together. Seems to be in good shape. Everything in this is steel. I don't really see, except for the disc on the governor. That's brass. That's definitely, they did use brass on the governor. The rest of it is steel. Garrard did use more brass, quite a bit more brass. You remember the weights on there, there were 3 of them on that motor, and they were brass. fairly large spring barrel. That could be a larger spring than Garrard used. It doesn't look as small and dainty as the Garrard one is. But the basic put together of it is classic Garrard. They copied the whole thing. A small phonograph motor. And it has this little plastic collar on here. That's your clue there that as opposed to our phonograph, it's plastic. It's not Bakelite. That's some kind of an actuator for the auto brake, which I have not yet figured out. It's vaguely Columbia-ish, you know. We'll figure that out. It's stuck right now. It's all rusted stuck, or stuck with old lubricant. I'm not really sure which. This had a pot metal reproducer on it. I know that because I found tiny fragments of it stuck in the horn compartment. There was no reproducer when I got it. That was some time back, as this has been sort of sitting around waiting. I temporarily tried to fit this Pollard on there. You would probably remember this. I used the identical reproducer on the, which one? No, the Decca 105 Salon, except that one didn't say Pollard on it. It was just like a little design in there. But obviously that's the same, and it's going to have to be rebuilt the same way. I haven't done it yet. That's to put new rubber sleeves on that tone arm, and it'll be fine. Everything else is good on it. Japanese style winding handle. You see this on a lot of machines. Now these machines have various names on them, and some of them might even say Columbia on them or something like that, but they're not, obviously. They're Japanese copies. A lot of these were sold to American GIs, you know, after the war, who were stationed in Japan as part of the occupation forces. Surprisingly, this machine does not say made in occupied Japan, which makes me believe that it was not intended for export, because everything I've seen that was exported from Japan post-1945 up until the mid-50s was marked made in occupied Japan. Everyone. After that, it was marked made in Japan. But for consumption within the country, they wouldn't have put that on here, and it is not anywhere on this machine. So that leads me to believe this was probably brought home by maybe an American diplomat, businessman, or a soldier returning home. And there were plenty of them, you know, especially once the Korean War got going. Very good shaped case, you know, little stuffs here and there, and underneath it wasn't beat around and smacked around too much. This is going to end up with a Swiss reproducer, not necessarily that one, because this uses a slip-on reproducer. It just slides on there. There's no little slot. You know, I could Dremel one out, but I really don't want to do that. I don't want to alter the machine. But I do have some other Swiss reproducers that are slide-ons, and we're going to end up trying one of those once this is all done and back together. That could take a while because it's going to need some scrubbing on that motor. That thing is pretty filthy. And who knows what condition the spring is going to be in. I did get it to turn a little bit, but it really wasn't turning much. But then it could just be stuck. That grease looks 1,000 years old and pretty nasty. Everything else is pretty straightforward. There's nothing really broken on it. Everything's together. I like these washers they used. You look at this. That is some kind of wallboard material, and it still has the shiny on it. These go between the motor and the motorboard, and the screw goes through them. It's like they punched them out of some kind of other, you know, leftover material from something else. This little chip fell out of there. That's a veneer. I'm going to glue that back on. It goes right there by the horn. A couple of chips missing. This black paint really gets me. They must have really been short of chromium not to chrome that, or nickel, to not nickel plate it. But it is in good shape. I mean, it's not stuck. Everything's pretty good. The detent is working. You see, it doesn't overextend itself. Back there doesn't matter, but over here's where it does. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. It's hitting that. So maybe it doesn't have a detent, or it is broken. We'll discover that when we take it apart. I guess it doesn't really matter that much, but usually with an auto brake, there is something to prevent it from over-traveling. So it's probably there. You can see that this attaches the same way as the HMVs do, the late 101s and the 102s. So it's a total copy of the handle. Total copy of that. I'm kind of surprised they got away with it. You know, I don't know, maybe by this point, the original manufacturers, HMV, Garrard, and so on, weren't that concerned with copyright infringement. I don't know. Or maybe they licensed it. I have no idea. But that's definitely a fairly decent copy of a Garrard motor. But of course, no Garrard markings. Doesn't even say Japan on there. There's no markings at all on that. None at all. If I didn't, you know, if I picked this out of a box, my first thought would be it's an unmarked or unbadged Garrard motor. Until I see things like, you know, the way they made the gear, the lack of brass on that and all that, then right away I'd know something was up, because Garrard motors, they have a lot of brass. They always did. That's the clasp. Let's see what it looks like closed. Very neat appearance. You know, the general appearance of this is of a machine that would have been made in the 1930s rather than probably the late 40s and early 50s. But when you have to piece together a phonograph factory from dozens of scattered pieces here and there, I guess you make what you can. And I have 4 or 5 different, you know, post-war Japanese phonographs, portables. Most of them have this type of, you know, lid clasp, that style of handle, different names on them. You know, the Nico, there was another one. One of them I think actually says Columbia. So, but it isn't. It's definitely Japanese. Everything about it is Japanese. So we're going to do this one up and see if we can get it playing. And looking half decent. And there you go. Post-World War II Japanese portable phonograph. And have a happy Memorial Day, all of you out there. And remember to remember those who gave their all for our freedom.